I never imagined I'd be the kind of man who questioned his wife's loyalty. After 50 years together, you start to believe that some things are unshakable. I thought I knew my wife better than anyone, better than she knew herself sometimes. But life has a way of making a fool out of you when you least expect it. Margaret and I met in college, back when life was simple. We got married young, worked hard, and raised a family. We struggled in the beginning, money was always tight, and we didn't always see eye to eye. But we built a life, brick by brick, day by day. We had 3 kids, all grown now, with families of their own. We had retirement savings, a comfortable home, and the peace of knowing we had made it through the hard years. At least, that's what I thought. Lately, something had changed. It wasn't obvious at first. Just little things. Margaret started dressing differently, more put together, more stylish. She used to prefer comfort over fashion, but suddenly, she was buying clothes I hadn't seen her wear in decades. She started wearing perfume again, the same floral scent she used when we were younger. I complimented her on it. "You look nice today," I said one afternoon as she grabbed her purse. She smiled, but it wasn't the warm, familiar smile I knew. "Just felt like dressing up," she said lightly. I let it go. People change. Maybe she just wanted to feel good about herself. Then came the nights out. Margaret had always been a homebody. She liked spending evenings with a book or watching a show with me. But now, she was going out 2 or 3 nights a week. She said it was book club, or dinner with friends. She never invited me. One Friday, she left around 6 in the evening. "I won't be too late," she said, kissing my cheek. 9 came and went. Then 10. Then 11. I called her. No answer. She finally came home just before midnight, setting her purse on the counter like nothing was wrong. "You late?" I said. She barely looked at me. "Yeah, we got carried away talking." I nodded but didn't say anything else. Something wasn't right. Then there was her phone. Margaret used to leave it anywhere, on the kitchen counter, in her purse, by the bed. Now, it was always in her hand, or face down on the table. If it buzzed, she grabbed it quickly. If I walked into the room while she was texting, she'd lock the screen immediately. One night, we were watching TV, and her phone vibrated on the armrest. She picked it up so fast it was almost funny. "Who's that?" I asked casually. "Just Helen," she said, barely looking at me before typing a response. Helen. The friend she suddenly spent so much time with. I didn't push. Not yet. But something in my gut told me I needed to pay attention. Then, one morning, I found my answer. Margaret had an old phone she kept in a drawer in the kitchen. She never used it anymore. Or so I thought. She was in the shower when I opened that drawer. The screen was on, a new message lighting up the display. "John, last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about you." I closed the drawer and walked away. I knew. But I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I had a plan. And I had 50 years worth of patience to make sure I got this right. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in my head. Every late-night outing. Every excuse. Every little change in Margaret's behavior that I had ignored. 50 years. Half a damn century. And for what? At sunrise, I got out of bed, moving carefully so I wouldn't wake her. Margaret was still asleep, curled up on her side, like she didn't have a care in the world. Like she wasn't sneaking around behind my back. I walked to the kitchen and made coffee, my movements slow and deliberate. I wasn't the type to act on impulse, never had been. I had spent my life making calculated decisions, thinking things through before making a move. This wouldn't be any different. I needed proof. Real, undeniable proof. That text message was enough for me, but if I confronted her now, she'd deny it. She'd twist it around, make excuses, gaslight me into thinking I was imagining things. No. I needed something solid. So I started watching. That day, I kept my routine normal. I read the newspaper, did some work in the garage, even chatted with our neighbor Bill when he stopped by to borrow a tool. I acted like nothing was wrong. But I paid attention. Margaret had a late lunch with the girls. I watched her get ready, saw the way she checked her reflection in the mirror a little too long. She was wearing the red blouse I used to love, the one she hadn't worn in years. And perfume. She didn't wear perfume for book club. I didn't say a word. Just smiled and kissed her cheek as she left. Then I followed her. I gave her a 10-minute head start, then grabbed my keys and got in my truck. I kept my distance, driving slow, watching as she turned onto the main road. But she didn't go to the restaurant where she and her friends usually met. She drove across town, into a part of the city we rarely visited. My grip on the steering wheel tightened as I watched her pull into the parking lot of a small cafe. And then I saw him. A man, tall, silver hair, maybe mid-50s, waiting near the entrance. She got out of the car, smoothed her blouse, and smiled. Not the polite smile she gave the cashier at the grocery store. Not the forced smile she gave me lately. A real smile. The kind that lit up her face. The kind I hadn't seen in years. And then he put his hand on the small of her back and guided her inside. I didn't follow them in. I didn't need to. I had seen enough. I sat there in my truck for a long time, staring at the cafe doors, my mind racing. I could go in there right now. Confront them. Make a scene. But that would be letting her off easy. No, I had a better idea. I took out my phone, snapped a quick picture of them together, and drove home. Margaret had no idea, but her world was about to come crashing down. I didn't go straight home. After I took the picture of Margaret and her lover, I parked my truck a few blocks away and sat there, thinking. If I confronted her now, she'd cry. She'd swear it was nothing. She'd spin a story so well rehearsed that even I might start to doubt what I saw. No. I wasn't going to let that happen. I needed more. More than a picture, more than a feeling in my gut. I wanted undeniable proof. So I made a decision. I drove to a store on the edge of town, one of those places that sells everything from hunting gear to surveillance equipment. I bought a small voice recorder, a second phone with a new number, and a few other things I might need later. This wasn't about catching her. I had already caught her. This was about destroying her. Margaret wasn't just cheating. She was spending our money on this guy. I needed to know how much. When I got home, I went straight to my office and logged into our joint bank account. Margaret didn't know much about online banking, she always left that to me. I scrolled through the transactions. Restaurant charges. Hotels. Shopping trips. Hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars withdrawn over the past few months. She wasn't just having an affair. She was funding it. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness. Just a cold certainty that she had made her choice. And now, it was my turn. The next morning, I acted normal. I made coffee. I read the newspaper. When Margaret came downstairs, I kissed her cheek. "Did you have a good time yesterday?" I asked casually. She smiled. "Yeah, it was nice." Lie. I watched as she checked her phone, waiting for a message. Probably from him. I needed to move fast. That day, while she was out, I installed the voice recorder under the passenger seat of her car. It would pick up everything, their conversations, their plans, their secrets. Then, I called a private investigator. I need proof, I told him. Real proof. You looking for a divorce case? He asked. No, I said. I'm looking to ruin her. He didn't ask any more questions. By the end of the day, I had a tracker on her car and a plan in motion. Margaret had no idea. Her time was running out. I was done waiting. For the past week, I had been gathering evidence, watching Margaret lie to my face every single day. The voice recorder in her car was already filling up with conversations I wished I had never heard. But I didn't let myself feel anything. Not anger. Not sadness. Not regret. I had a job to do. And I was going to make her pay. The private investigator was worth every penny. The pictures. The videos. The timestamps. Margaret had been seeing this man, John Parker, 55 years old, twice divorced, unemployed, for almost a year. A whole year. 12 months of lies. I sat in my office, looking at the neatly organized folder of proof. This wasn't just for me anymore. This was for our children, our friends, the people who still believed Margaret was a devoted wife. She had built a fake life. Now I was going to burn it down. Margaret thought she had everything under control. She thought she was smart. Careful. That I was some blind, old fool. She had no idea what was coming. That afternoon, I sent John Parker a text, from a new number. I know about you and Margaret. Meet me tomorrow at 3 p.m. We need to talk. He replied in less than 5 minutes. Who is this? I didn't answer. Let him sweat. I had bigger plans for Margaret. The next morning, I made a call to our lawyer. Start the paperwork, I said. But don't file yet. I want this to be loud. I wanted Margaret to feel every ounce of pain she had caused me. And I knew exactly where to start. Margaret had another girls' night planned. She kissed my cheek before leaving, same as always. Same fake smile. Same empty eyes. Except this time, I knew exactly where she was going. I followed her. Again. Only this time, I had something special planned. I wasn't going to confront her in private. No, no, no. I was going to make it public. Because after 50 years of marriage, she had the audacity to throw me away like I was nothing. So I was going to show the world exactly who she was. And Margaret? She would never see it coming. I pulled into the parking lot a few minutes after Margaret. This time, she didn't meet John at the cafe. No, they had moved to a hotel. How predictable. I watched from my truck as she got out of her car, smoothing her dress, checking her hair in the reflection of the window. John was already waiting by the entrance. When she reached him, he pulled her into an embrace, kissed her like she was his and his alone. I took another picture. This was exactly what I needed. Margaret had no idea I was watching. No idea her world was crumbling around her. I let them go inside. Then, I made a call. Hey, it's me. You ready? The voice on the other end chuckled. Oh yeah. This is gonna be good. I smirked, putting the truck in park. It was time to end this. An hour later, I walked into the hotel lobby, calm and collected. The receptionist barely glanced up as I strolled past the desk. I knew exactly which room they were in. I had paid for the information. Stopping in front of the door, I knocked once. Silence. Then footsteps. The door cracked open, and John's smug face appeared. He didn't even get a chance to speak before I shoved it open with my shoulder, sending him stumbling back. Margaret was sitting on the bed, wrapped in a sheet, her eyes wide with horror. "Harold," she gasped. I tossed the folder of photos onto the bed. "Surprise." Margaret's face turned pale. John, half-dressed, stumbled back, hands up. "Whoa, hey, man, let's—" I cut him off. "Shut up." He did. Margaret's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "Harold, I can explain." I chuckled, shaking my head. "Explain? Oh, please. This should be good." I picked up the folder and flipped it open, pulling out the pictures. One by one, I tossed them onto the bed. Margaret and John at the cafe. Margaret sneaking out late at night. Margaret walking into this very hotel. She stared at them, her hands shaking. You followed me?" I tilted my head. "Followed you?" "Oh, sweetheart, I did more than that." I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I tapped the screen, and suddenly, the room filled with her voice. The audio from the recorder in her car. Her words. Her laughter. The way she whispered his name when she thought no one could hear. John took a step back, looking between us. "What the hell is this?" I ignored him. Margaret pressed her hands to her ears. "Turn it off." "Harold, please." I let it play for a few more seconds. Just enough. Then I turned it off. The silence was heavier than anything I had ever felt. John looked like he was about to bolt. I smiled at him. "Going somewhere?" He swallowed hard. "Look, man, I didn't know she was married." "She told me." I laughed. A real, deep laugh. "Oh, John. You poor, stupid bastard." I reached into my pocket again and pulled out a manila envelope. John frowned. "What's that?" I tossed it onto the bed next to the pictures. "That," I said, "is everything I found on you." He hesitated before picking it up. His hands trembled as he flipped through the documents. Debt. Fraud. A lawsuit from his second ex-wife. His face turned red. "Where the hell did you get this?" I leaned in close. "You're not the only one who can dig up secrets." Margaret sat frozen, her eyes darting between me and John. John ran a hand through his hair. "Listen, man, I held up a finger. Save it." I turned back to Margaret. "You thought you were careful," I said, voice calm. "Thought I'd never find out." Tears welled in her eyes. "Harold, please. I didn't mean for this to happen." I scoffed. "Didn't mean for it to happen? So what was it then? An accident? You tripped and fell into his bed?" She broke into a sob. I didn't care. I looked at John. "Here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna walk out of this room and never contact my wife again." John's lips pressed into a thin line. "And if I don't?" I smirked. "Then that envelope goes to your creditors, your ex-wife's lawyer, and oh, my buddy in the police department." John's face drained of color. He grabbed his jacket and ran out the door. I turned back to Margaret. She sat there, shaking. "Harold, please." I stood. "I'll see you at home." And then I walked out, leaving her alone in that disgusting hotel room. I didn't go home right away. I needed time. Time to think, to plan. I had spent the last week gathering proof, setting up my trap, but this? This was the real game now. Margaret thought she could cry her way out of this. She thought I would be weak, that I would break down and forgive her like some pathetic fool. She had no idea who she was dealing with. When I finally walked into the house, she was there, waiting. Her face was streaked with tears, eyes red and swollen. She had changed into one of her usual house dresses, as if pretending everything was normal would somehow erase what she had done. "Harold," she whispered, stepping toward me. "Please, can we talk?" I let the silence drag out. Let her squirm. Then I walked past her, set my keys on the table, and poured myself a drink. She stood there, hands clenched together. "Say something." I took a slow sip. "Pack your things." She flinched. "What?" "You heard me." I turned to face her, voice calm. "You leaving tonight?" She shook her head violently. "No, Harold, please." I tossed another envelope onto the counter. "That's from my lawyer. You getting nothing." Her breath hitched. "Nothing?" I smirked. "Not a damn cent." She grabbed the envelope with trembling hands, ripping it open. Her eyes scanned the pages, widening with every line. I don't understand," she stammered. "The house, the accounts. Already taken care of." Her head snapped up. "I moved everything out of our joint accounts 2 weeks ago," I said, enjoying the way her face crumbled. "The house? In my name only. The cars? Mine. You have nothing." She let out a broken sob. "Harold, please. I was stupid. It didn't mean anything." I laughed. "Didn't mean anything?" I gestured toward the folder of pictures still sitting on the table. "Sure looked like it meant something." She lunged for me, grabbing my arm. "We can fix this. Please. I'll do anything." I pulled away. "You already did enough." Then I pointed to the stairs. "Pack. Now." She didn't move. I leaned in, lowering my voice. "Or do you want me to send those pictures to everyone? The kids? Your friends? Your church group?" Her breath caught in her throat. She knew I would do it. I wanted to do it. Her body sagged in defeat. She turned and stumbled toward the stairs. And just like that, Margaret was finished. Margaret thought it was over. She thought that packing her bags and walking out of the house was the worst part. She had no idea what I had planned next. The morning after she left, I sent a message to our children. "Family dinner this Sunday. It's important. No further explanation. Let them wonder. Let them think." By Sunday, the house was full. Our eldest son, David, brought his wife and kids. Our daughter, Susan, arrived with her husband. Even our youngest, Mark, flew in from Chicago. Margaret wasn't invited. They all sat around the dining table, sensing something was wrong. Susan glanced at me. "Dad? What's going on?" I took a deep breath. "I need to show you all something." I reached into the drawer and pulled out the folder. Then I spread the pictures across the table. Gasps. Silence. Then, "Mom?" Susan's voice cracked. What is this?" David picked up a picture of Margaret kissing John. His jaw clenched. "You joking, right? This is a mistake." I shook my head. "No mistake. She's been seeing him for a year. Lying to all of us." Susan's hands trembled. "Dad, why didn't you tell us sooner?" I exhaled slowly. "Because I wanted her to see what it feels like to lose everything." Silence again. Heavy, suffocating. Then David stood up. "Where is she?" I shrugged. "Gone. And she's getting nothing." His fists tightened. "She doesn't deserve anything." I looked around the table. "My children. My family. We weren't broken. She was. And now? Everyone knew it. I was sitting on the back porch, watching the sunset, when I heard a car pull into the driveway. I knew who it was before she even knocked. Margaret. I took a slow sip of my drink and let her knock again. Desperate. When I finally opened the door, she stood there, looking like a ghost of the woman I once knew. Her hair was a mess. Her eyes swollen from crying. She clutched a small bag in her hands, knuckles white. "Harold," she whispered. "Please." I leaned against the doorframe. "What do you want?" She swallowed hard. "I have nowhere to go." "Not my problem." "I made a mistake," she continued, her voice shaking. "I know I did. But please, don't throw me away like this." I studied her for a moment. Then I stepped aside. Her face lit up with hope. Until I pointed at the suitcase sitting in the hallway. Already packed. Already waiting. She froze. What is that?" I smiled. "That's your new life. There's a bus ticket inside. One way." She shook her head, stepping back. "No. Harold, please, I don't want to go. This is my home." "Not anymore." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "You can't just erase 50 years, Harold." I exhaled slowly. "You erased them the second you walked into that hotel room." Her shoulders slumped. For the first time, she looked truly broken. But I felt nothing. "Take the bag, Margaret." She hesitated. "Take it, or I'll call the police and have you removed." Her breath hitched. She knew I meant it. With trembling hands, she grabbed the suitcase. Then she turned, walked to her car, and drove away. I watched her disappear down the road. And I didn't look back. 1 week later, the house felt different. Not empty. Lighter. For the first time in 50 years, I woke up without the weight of a lie in my bed. I drank my coffee without hearing fake morning pleasantries. I read my newspaper without feeling a stranger's presence across the table. It felt damn good. Then, the phone rang. I didn't need to check the caller ID. I knew who it was. Margaret. I let it ring. Let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a notification popped up. One new message. I almost deleted it. But curiosity won. I pressed play. "Harold, please, pick up. I don't know where to go. The kids won't talk to me. I lost my apartment. I don't have anywhere to stay. Please, Harold. Please call me back." I sipped my coffee. Deleted the message. Then I called my lawyer. "Finalize the divorce," I said. "Make sure she never gets a cent." No hesitation. No second thoughts. Margaret was a chapter closed. And I was finally free.